we say that anything that we acquire, or at least I tell individuals, has to have a 200 million ounce potential. That's the number that I use. And I think that's a number that someone that would look to acquire us, because again, we're an exploration company. And I want to stress that we don't have aspirations to go into production or anything like that. We are purely all about the drill bit and how I believe the drill bit is what drives value in a stock. So I've said that about Las Coloradas. I'm going to say the same for Almoloya without getting into detail there. There has been past production. We've got past production records, but I'm going to just kind of simplify it and say, in order for us to get involved and to move something forward, we want to see that it's got that big potential. Almoloya is a little different looking than Las Coloradas in the sense that it's gold, silver, zinc, lead oriented with the possibility of a carbonate replacement deposit, which is a CRD.
For disclosure purposes, our site does not make recommendations for purchases or sale of stocks, services, or products. Nothing on our site or this podcast should be construed as an offer or solicitation to buy or sell products or securities. All investing involves risk and possible losses. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For disclosure purposes, Kingsmen Resources is a featured client on the Investor Ideas website. Scott, it's great to have you back on the show. I feel the first question we have to ask for investors, because I'm sure they're dying to hear, is how is the drilling going at Las Coloradas? What can you tell us so far?
So, Kelly, thanks again for having me on. It's been one heck of a start to the summer, that's for sure. But to that question, what I can say is we started drilling about 3 weeks ago. The team is there. We are now fully operational, and I'll say, like any drill program, we had a few hiccups to get started, but 24 hours a day we're drilling. We've got two shifts. I can tell you that we are currently drilling on what we call the Soledad vein. We are just at the extension of the old Asarco mine. We're currently drilling there under the water table, and things are going well, and everyone on site is encouraged so far. And there's a lot of drilling to be done. As I think I told your listeners, we were looking at essentially a 3 month period while drilling was going to take place or was taking place over a 3 month period, and that's holding true to expectation. I think we will be there till probably at least for this program until the end of September.
Can we talk about the other exciting news that you just came out with yesterday for your new letter of intent for the project for Almoloya?
Almoloya. You
Almoloya
you
Project.
got it. So I think for those that may be new or for those that listened to my last podcast, our expectation or our plan was always to become the preeminent explorer in the Parral district in Mexico. And as you know, we started out on this path uh, post-COVID, and that's when we had reviewed a number of projects. And I'll say it again, we spent the better part of 4 months there. And Almoloya was a project that we had identified. It, like Las Coloradas, was a very fragmented ownership, and it was located about 30 kilometers from Las Coloradas. But again, it had past producing mine. It had several majors over the years that had been there, and some of your listeners will know Teck. They'll know the name Kennecott. They'll know the name Anglo-American. Hemlo was in there. And again, what we saw was an opportunity to take those claims, put them all together as one big land package. But it was this fragmented district again. Like I said, it had all these major operators in there. No one operator controlled the entire area. And those were the opportunities that we were looking for, and that's what Las Coloradas presented. And Almoloya presents that in a much bigger way in the sense that the project is 3 times larger than Las Coloradas. That process was, we were always doing our due diligence. I was helping out when I could and talking to some of the vendors. And that's what brought us to yesterday, or I should say, where the announcement was yesterday, but it was on Friday where I concluded an agreement to have this all put together under one umbrella. It's the same pattern that we did at Las Coloradas, which means I issued no shares for the acquisition. There is no commitment as to expenditures on the project. There are payments that are due. And again, they're escalating payments over an 8-year period, which allows us to really get in there as a company and do the work that we need to get us to where we are now at Las Coloradas, which is drilling. This is another drill ready prospect that, well, there's more than one prospect, but it's a drill ready project that I've accumulated all of this data. We've synthesized it, we've put it together, and I think there'll be more news to come on that front. And again, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, from a shareholder perspective, we've not issued shares, so we currently, and your listeners know, we have 25 million shares outstanding. We have just shy of $2 million Canadian in cash. And that is allowed us to fully fund our 14-hole drill program at Las Coloradas. And it's going to allow us to do our initial exploration work at Almoloya.
Can you talk a little bit about the upside potential of some of the historics there at your new project?
Sure. So while we have a target at Las Coloradas of, we say that anything that we acquire, or at least I tell individuals, has to have a 200 million ounce potential. That's the number that I use. And I think that's a number that someone that would look to acquire us, because again, we're an exploration company. And I want to stress that we don't have aspirations to go into production or anything like that. We are purely all about the drill bit and how I believe the drill bit is what drives value in a stock. So I've said that about Las Coloradas. I'm going to say the same for Almoloya without getting into detail there. There has been past production. We've got past production records, but I'm going to just kind of simplify it and say, in order for us to get involved and to move something forward, we want to see that it's got that big potential. And I also will say that Almoloya is a little different looking than Las Coloradas in the sense that it's gold, silver, zinc, lead oriented with the possibility of a carbonate replacement deposit, which is a CRD. So it's similar, but it's different. And I think that's what, again, adds to the portfolio as we continue to grow the company.
Well, I know that CRDs are kind of where a lot of people have done extremely well in Mexico, so it sounds like a great add-on. Can you talk about, now that you are building out with this acquisition, potentially like the broader strategy for Kingsmen moving forward with the two projects?
The strategy that we entered into Mexico with, and the one we still have today, is the fact that we're explorationists. I want to say we're good explorationists. We'll see when we get the results from Las Coloradas, but you know, I think for us looking forward is we want to find something that somebody else wants, and in our case, we have a neighbor, Gold, which operates the Parral operation, which is a heap leach that they have. We're located about 10 kilometers from them. They currently process all the tailings from the old La Prita mine, which was in Parral. That's what Parral was built around. They did a deal to capture all those tailings from the community and process them. That is going to need, those are going to be have to be replenished, those tailings that they're doing. So the obvious candidate for us, and because I have a relationship there with them, is for us to do the exploration, find something, and then potentially sell it to them for feed for their facility. Um, that's really our goal there is whether it's them or anybody else, whether it's Los Gatos, which is First Majestic Silver, which is about 70 kilometers away. We want to find something that we can, like every junior, that we can pass forward and say, here, take this from us.
Can you also talk about for your geologists, like an exploration team, now that you're looking at adding on this acquisition, are you going to have to expand that out, or do they already have that covered, or what's that going to look like?
I'm going to say that we have that covered because we have our QP, our VP of exploration. He's currently on site. He's been on site in Mexico in terms of the start of this drill program. He's still there. He's responsible for reviewing it. We've brought two other geos into under our umbrella, I guess. So we're capable, and everyone's excited, and they can't wait, to continue this journey, I guess, that we're on, and following my aspirations and what I'd like to see done there. Again, I go back to we want to be the preeminent explorer because I think that's where the upside is. It's definitely, from a stock market perspective, it's all about that drill bit and getting that to turn.
Amazing that you did this without having to dilute your share structure, because again, that's what I feel is like probably besides your assets, probably one of the best parts is that it's such a clean share structure. Can you just go a little more in depth into the financials, like with your 2 million in cash, when is your first payment due, and like how those things break down for investors that are just curious on the financial side?
So for Las Coloradas, we are in our third year of our option payments. We have a 7-year window. So this coming November, we'll have a $55,000 US payment due, which, isn't a lot in the
Oh.
scheme of things. And with Almoloya, what we did there, again, I talk about this stage payments over 8 years, but our initial payment for the first year is $75,000 US. And then it escalates, Cali, right, to a purchase price. And they should go back to Las Coloradas. Sorry, I'm jumping around. Las Coloradas has a $2.1 million US purchase price. Almoloya has an $8.6 million US purchase price. But those bigger payments are due later in the cycle, meaning years 5, 6, 7, 8 for Almoloya, and years 4, 5, 6, 7 for Las Coloradas. And again, we're all about the drill bit exploration. If we have that success that we think we're going to have or that we're hoping to have, those payments are, you know,
Yeah, I feel like you're fully funded to handle that for the year.
yes, we'll be fully funded. And again, I built this in the sense that I've tried to keep, our dilution to a minimal as best you can as a company. So again, hoping we have that success because the drill bit should indicate, the stock and then allowing us to raise additional capital higher up. And that's what we've been able to do so far. Every one of our raises has been incrementally higher as we've grown the company.
I want to talk just about the some of the generals that's happening in Mexico. Scheinbaum came out with some comments that I feel like people maybe misunderstood and panicked a little bit. It obviously doesn't affect you, but do you want to just give some of your thoughts or feedback on what she's saying and explain to investors that maybe didn't understand the full commentary from her?
Sure. I think again, there's a lot of political noise and misinterpretation of what she's actually saying. So in our case, our claims are held, were held by or are held by private individuals or companies. Those claims are in good standing. And what we do, or what we've done at Las Coloradas, is we've purchased, or we have an option to purchase those claims. So they're there, they've been issued, they're registered, everything's good. What you can't do is you can't go out and stake new ground. That's what Claudia came out and said. She wasn't saying anything about the claims that exist, and she wasn't saying anything about the permits for the companies that are in that permitting process to go into production or to build a mine. A company that comes to mind is Silver Tiger. They're waiting on their open pit permit, and that's going to be what is called a modified permit because they have their underground permit, and those types of permits are being issued. Yes, they take time, but the expectation is that those companies or companies like that will get their permit. All she said, which the media kind of took the wrong way, was, we're not going to allow new claims to be staked. So again, it doesn't affect us. It doesn't affect the companies that are established there in Mexico. But the media kind of twists it to say, oh, she's against, mining. She doesn't like mining. But a week before, their economic minister came out and said, oh, we want mining. I mean, Mexico's the third largest producer of silver. They're not going to say no to mining.
I feel like, for investors, when they worry about these, it almost makes your value increase as far as I'm concerned, because that you already have these claims and everything in place and potential of, with silver prices the way they are, I feel like it's really an added value long term.
Yeah, and I think, Cali, is part of the due diligence when you're a mining company, you go in and you look at who owns the claims. Are the taxes paid? Are there any liens against the claims? Like that's all part of your due, or should be part of your due diligence. And that's why we have the confidence that we have. I'm a big proponent of New Mexico. It's a great place to work. It's got, a good source of people. They're qualified people. They know mining. From that aspect, you couldn't ask for a better place to be. But again, I'm the president of a Mexican mining company, so I'm going to say that. But, I've worked in other jurisdictions that's not readily available, you know, and in Mexico it is. They've got good infrastructure.
For investors, just like to kind of give them a zoom out perspective of now you have this potential Almoloya. Is that doubling or like tripling the size of your potential asset? Or like, can you give them kind of like a ballpark of how much this is an add-on from Las Coloradas?
The value wise, it's a big acquisition, and the opportunity is big there. I mean, I go back to say, it's a fragmented district that's been assembled and put together, but there's been no modern exploration there for 26 years. And no one company ever held those claims that we now hold. So, I'll give you an example. Kennecott was there. They had this, this whole program that we've been able to see what their plan was, but they walked away from it because they couldn't get the land mass that's required. So, I want to talk about district scale potential. Las Coloradas presents that, as does Almoloya. We've got it tied up so that there aren't, fragmented pieces or another company, right on our border. And that's taken over 25 years to put together. And I think I had put that in the press release. That's, for it to sit idle like that, and be able to kind of slowly, acquire, it's quite a remarkable feat, if you can call it that, to put it all together.
I mean, you did that with Las Coloradas, and it sounds like you're doing it again, which, I think in your first podcast you said you wanted properties that no junior had explored, and it sounds like you're right on track. So, Scott, do you want to give any closing remarks for investors of what they can look out for, or whatever your last statements that you'd like to give them?
I think, Kelly, for me, it's all about delivery. Sometimes, we'll say things of what we want to do and how we want to build something out. And given the time, what I'll say to shareholders is stay tuned because we are continuing to set out what we said we were going to do right from the get-go. When people said, "Oh, Scott, you're setting up Kingsmen. What are you setting it up for? What's it going to look like?" And yes, it's taken time and it's taken a lot of patience and a lot of work. But I think for, people that are new to the story is stay tuned because there's a lot more to come. And we'll see what the drill bit delivers. That's my motto is the drill bit delivers value, and I don't think anybody can contradict that because that's the exciting time in the life of a junior company.